Hang tight.
All right.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Mercy. What the hell does that mean? Welcome to Music Makers. This is JHS, and I'm here with BreakTime, and I got most of the members here, which is kind of exciting. Today, we are going to be talking about music from the 70s.
Oh, that.
Hey, I haven't heard that one.
How would I have known? I was trying to guess before we started. I was trying to guess what he was going to
What are
play,
you going to do?
and I wasn't sure. But I kind of would have assumed it was Elton John.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to
Oh
the
dear.
Cool, awesome. So,
All right.
as we were in the pre-show and we were talking, Joey just arrived here. What's up, Joey?
Yep.
What's up, man?
What's up?
How's it
We
going?
were talking about everything's good, man. We were talking about different bands from the 70s and acts and all that stuff, and I realized, man, that's a lot. There's a lot of going on because it's also very, very. If you really look at it, I was thinking about this right when we were talking. It's very eclectic, right? Because you got rock, you got that country rock, you got the punk scene coming, you got disco coming out of nowhere. So it's very, very different and diverse music coming out. So different from the 60s, where it was kind of like this. There was the birth of rock and roll basically was during the 60s, and it was pretty consistent through that. And I think maybe 69, 70, it kind of started shifting into this thing. And one of the things that I really liked about, I mean, not to say that the 60s band weren't melodic, but in the 70s, for some reason, in my opinion, something happened with melody where it really got very melodic. And there are a lot of bands that I think Tommy's going to talk about, a couple of these bands, with very, very, just very melodic. Just it focuses more on the melody of, as opposed to the rockness and the hardness of the band itself, of the music itself. It's really more about that. Here's Mary Lawson.
Hey.
Hey,
Good evening.
good evening. So I think it's a fair statement to say that the 70s was kind of all over the place when it came to
Oh yeah.
when it comes to music. So I'm gonna actually in a good way though, in a really good way, because I think there was something for everybody. Really, you want punk, you want heavy rock, you want jazz, you want blues, you want disco, you want to just dance, you want to just sit back and just with a girl and just romantic songs, from Chicago and Boston and those guys. I think it's just a great decade for music, because I think it set us up for what was coming in the 80s. Towards the end, you can really feel it coming into what happened in the 80s, which I think some of it was great and some of it was kind of not so good, because I think it took a lot of that melodic rock stuff and then they made it all kind of I don't know, candy-like, and they just added a lot of candy, to it. Hey, all you hunks out there. Okay.
Hey, Mary.
Hey, Mary.
I have to post it, because when is that ever going to happen again? Thank you, Mary.
Hey.
Um,
I can't help my natural beauty.
it is what it is, ladies. And we had Barry White in the 70s too. So, all right. So, Sean, I'm Dr. Sean. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I know you.
PhD.
You've earned that. So, PhD, public high school diploma. So I'm gonna give you the reins and have you kind of delegate who you want to go next. First, you can go first. You can do whatever you want. I'm gonna have some coffee.
All right. So, Tommy, be prepped for when I'm done. I have a long presentation, but be prepped for when I'm done.
Don't worry, I'm prepped. Mr. BreakTime.
That was that
was weird.
was a great introduction from you, John.
Thank you.
That basically encapsulated about 5 minutes of what I was going to say. So, for that.
Sorry
Grab
about
your
that.
popcorn, kids.
Well, I did it.
Get your popcorns.
I did it in about 4
Be a
minutes.
while. Yeah, that takes skill right there. So you're right that the 70s was an explosion of musical genres, and it coincided with the explosion of vinyl. This was really the best selling best vinyl record selling decade of all time. It all went downhill from there, but the 70s was the prime for vinyl.
Yeah.
Albums were bigger. They were actually considered bigger than Hollywood productions at times because young people did not have much control over a lot of the entertainment in their households. But of course, they had their bedrooms and they had their record players and they had their imagination looking at all the beautiful album covers.
Yeah.
And I think there's one word that's very important that really started in the late 60s, but it exploded in the 1970s. Besides explosion, you're going to hear explosion a lot because it was a cultural explosion, but counterculture. Counterculture really became prevalent in the 1970s, and it coincided with, well, the musical expression coincided with what was happening with the development of that identity that was being created by the youth growing up and creating the world that they wanted to live in. So all these genres we were talking about, you listed them already, but I'll list them again. Hard rock, punk rock, prog rock, glam rock, country rock, jazz rock, disco, funk, blues. We're definitely leaving some out there as well. But all of these genres exploded in the 70s with the explosion, the rise of the singer-songwriters. Some of these singer-songwriters are Carole King, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, Jackson Browne, Linda Ronstadt, Van Morrison, Carly Simon, Randy Newman, Cat Stevens. A personal favorite of Andres's. He actually has a tattoo in the same location that this artist had. Jim Croce,
Oh, wow.
Bill Withers, Neil Young, Billy Joel, Elton John, and more. Something in common with all of these singer-songwriters was the place that they performed at, and it really propelled them to a successful career. And that place was the Troubadour.
Sure.
Troubadour in West Hollywood. It was a nightclub that was a catalyst for a lot of successful careers from singer-songwriters. And the most successful one was Elton John. Elton John. So he really defined popular music in the 1970s with hits like Your Song, Tiny Dancer, Rocket Man, Honky Cat, Daniel, Benny and the Jets, Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, Someone Saved My Life Tonight, Philadelphia Freedom, Sacrifice, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Crocodile Rock. And according to the Rolling Stone Encyclopedia of Rock and Roll, Elton John and Bernie Taupin had 26 top 40 hit singles, 16 top 10 and 6 number 1 hits. 15 of 19 U.S. album releases went gold or platinum, so they either made 500,000 or 1 million certified unit sales. And he had 2 of the best-selling albums in the 70s, which were, in 1974, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and 1975, Elton John's Greatest Hits.
Oh,
Elton was a great melody maker, and showmanship was just as important to him as was his melody making to his identity. So, yay, shout out to Elton John. So while Elton John was tearing it up in the pop realm, we also have a lot of troubadour acts that went over to the neighborhood of Van Nuys, to this studio, which is known today lovingly as a very rinky-dink, dirty place that actually is closed down now. And their famous handmade soundboard is owned by Dave Grohl in his Studio 606. And this record studio released albums from people like Buckingham Nicks, which would become Fleetwood Mac, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, John Fogerty and CCR, Neil Young, Leon Russell, Dr. John, Joe Cocker, and Elton John. And this was Sound City Studios. In the 70s, Sound City Studios was the location in which Fleetwood Mac recorded their best-selling and most widely acclaimed album, which was Rumors.
And if anybody's interested, there is a documentary on that.
Yes,
Definitely
I
should
watched
watch.
it last night.
Oh, did
Actually,
you really? Oh, yeah, I've seen it. It's pretty amazing. Anybody? I think it's on Netflix, right?
I watched it on Amazon Fire Stick, so I watched it on the Fire TV.
Cool.
$1.99, I think it was, or $3.99. $3.99.
Very nice.
So Mick Fleetwood heard a Buckingham Nicks track at Sound City Studios, and after the jazz guitarist that they had at the time, Bob Welch, left the band, he inquired through staff at Sound City, namely Keith Olsen, for the services of Lindsey Buckingham. And the only way that would happen is if his girlfriend Stevie Nicks joined the band as well. So Sound City, they were the mediators that created Fleetwood Mac. Yeah. Fleetwood Mac released Rumors, and then the floodgates opened for Sound City to have all these big name acts recording at their studio.
Yeah.
And their claim to fame was their handmade Neve mixing console. That for some reason they had a drum sound that was just so tasty and spicy that somehow the room, even though it was a terrible room for drums, that room plus a good drum kit and putting it through that console, even putting it through distortion, made a nice, crisp, tight drum sound that became the heartbeats of so many songs that were released in the 70s from Sound City. Yeah. And that was the only reason that Mick Fleetwood actually went to inquire at Sound City Studios in the beginning. So if it wasn't for that console, which was $75,000 to make, maybe Fleetwood Mac would have never been created.
Yeah.
And as I said, fun fact, Dave Grohl owns it now. He bought it from...
And he's using it, too.
He's using it, yeah. Paul McCartney came in to join the Foo Fighters and former Nirvana band members as well to record a track called Cut Me Some Slack. And that was a jam session. They were coming up with that song on the spot. And somehow in 2013, it won a Grammy for Best Rock Song. So that goes to show if you put Paul McCartney's name on any song, even if it's a jam song, the people at the Grammys are going to give that song a Grammy. So they were surprised themselves.
Yeah.
So
like,
Sound City, shout out to you guys at Sound City. Even though it is closed down now, Sound City is a very important place, just like the Troubadour is. Keep the Troubadour open. Donate to initiatives to keep that place open because we need our stages for when the COVID-19 pandemic rolls over. We need to save the Troubadour, save the Cavern Club as well. So Fleetwood Mac, Elton John. How about we go to country now? Country rock. The Eagles. They cultivated country rock by fusing popular music conventions with country themes and sensibilities. And they had prolific songwriters themselves, Glenn Frey, Don Henley, combined with Don Felder's and James Walsh's blend of technique and rambunctious tendencies. They created their own sound that was defined by thick harmonies, beautiful melodic structure, twangy guitars, and sometimes those guitars would be in harmony, which is probably one of the most famous solos of all time on Hotel California.
Yeah.
And they have the best-selling album.
I don't know if you know that, but they were improvising that solo. It wasn't. They didn't say that was going to be the solo. They just were both improvising, Don and Joe, and luckily, somebody was recording it, and they recorded that incredible, iconic solo, which to this day, anywhere on YouTube, anywhere, this is what everybody's just trying to get that same to do that same solo. But that's great.
Yes, sometimes it just takes the luck of having somebody behind the board that happens to turn the record button on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because you never know when those things are coming. I used to talk about that a lot. And it was harder for us back in the day because we didn't have the technology today. Like if I didn't have a phone, we like hit record and actually get a decent recording off of it. But
Tape is valuable, you know, and the
Yeah.
24 track mentality.
Oh
You know,
man,
that now you know you just have a computer and like anybody can do it.
and that's what I always tell like I think I've told you guys, just hit record while you guys are jamming. While you guys are jamming, just hit record, even if it's just a 20-minute or even a 15-minute jam. You know what I mean? Which seems like a long time, but our phones and our technology, we can absorb that now. So just hit record, and then later on, a week later, go back and hit play and see what you got. Sometimes you'd be like, oh, that's actually interesting, whatever. But yeah, okay.
Yeah. So getting back to the Eagles, they have the best-selling album of all time, which is the Eagles' Greatest Hits, 1971 to 1975, which is 38 times platinum. So that's over 38 million units of that record sold, which
Even
is
more than Michael Jackson.
it's even it was recalculated for digital plays and digital downloads. Now they're factoring those in, and now compared to Thriller, which is now 33 times platinum, 33 million units. That's the Eagles have the best-selling record of all time.
Cow. The thing about anyway, I'm just going to talk about the Eagles. The thing about just real quickly, the thing about the Eagles and why they got so successful is that they had that long break. Remember, they broke up and they didn't do anything. I think it was in the documentary,
When Hell Freezes Over.
Right. But during that whole time, classic rock radio came on. It was a brand new thing, and I remember it because I was a kid, and for the first time, we can hear all these songs that were on record that you only could hear if you had the record, because radio was not really. They were playing what was there, what was popular at the moment, and record. That's what the record companies did. What was at the moment. But then this other idea of a station came out to play all the hits, the oldies, they call them, right? But it was actually more classic rock, right? And so when that classic rock station came, it completely elevated the Eagles, because now they were not together playing, but their music was like completely relevant. Everybody was hearing Hotel California all the time. Everybody was hearing Take It Easy and all these great classic songs just on rotation, just constantly all the time. So it really, by the time they came back, they were bigger than ever in the minds of the people, because they've been listening to this music for like already 10 years after the breakup. So I just find that interesting because, first of all, I think the Eagles are probably melodically the best bands to do it, just with that many voices. And I don't mean melodically just the songs. I mean vocals, harmony, vocal arrangements, guitar arrangements. I mean, they were monsters. They were just monsters and incredible. When you listen to these songs, and they just really blow your mind how well crafted they are. And some songs that you may think are pretty simple, 4 or 5 chords, when you really listen to them, you realize that they really put a lot of work into these things. So that is my Eagle commentary. Back to you, Dr. John.
All right. Thank you, John. So we just talked about the Eagles and how they have the best selling album of all time. And that's compared to Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was part of the Jackson 5. Jackson Mania happened in the 1970s. A lot of teens were fawning over the Jackson 5. Motown, they rode their popularity alongside the success of Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, released in 1971, until 1976, when the band, with the exception of Jermaine Jackson, who was replaced by Randy Jackson, they moved to Epic Records, and they released some studio albums there and singles as well. According to some sources, the Jackson 5 actually have reportedly sold over 100 million records worldwide. And some of these are I Want You Back, ABC, I'll Be There, Shake Your Body Down to the Ground, and Can You Feel It? Jackson 5, just like the Eagles, they groomed a band member of their own for solo stardom. It was Don Henley, as well as Glenn Frey, because they were the songwriting team for the Eagles. that became solo stars, and Michael Jackson became. Spoiler: the '80s was basically Michael Jackson's stomping grounds. That was he made it in the '80s.
Yeah.
And then, lastly, this is for my dad. There's a surprising fact here, but Three Dog Night was the best grossing live tour band of the 1970s.
Really?
And their song "Joy to the World" was an anthem for a lot of teens in the 70s. My dad was one of them. So yay, shout out to my dad, shout out to Three Dog Night.
Nice.
Now, kids, get your pens and papers out because it's pop quiz time. We're going to go over everything that I just said. Just kidding. I'm done. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate
it. We also have to mention Under the Radar, but they're still around. The Beatles still recorded and released solo albums, and they had great output in the 70s between all of them. George Harrison with All Things Must Pass. That triple album is
great album, incredible album.
One of the best triple albums of all time, if not the best. The Ram from Paul McCartney, Imagine, Plastic Ono Band, Double Fantasy from John Lennon.
What year was Wings?
What year was Wings?
Yeah.
That took Paul, I'd say, was it 2 years? Let me check. Wings, Paul McCartney and Wings.
Yeah, I believe that was the 70s or mid 70s.
Yeah, that was actually 1971.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so about a year after the Beatles, officially broke up, that they formed Paul McCartney and Wings. That was still going on, and Elvis was still touring as well. He was still around, and
Vegas guy
being run to the ground by a bunch of enablers, but he was still there was still the Elvis of old inside. It just took a lot to get out of him.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate that. Just wanted to acknowledge Mary, who said she cried when Glenn passed, and I was shocked when Glenn Fry passed. I was like, you know what I mean? Because it was like it was still the band was still so fresh, and they was still, even though they were up there, they sounded fantastic. I saw them not long before Glenn passed, and they sounded incredible. It was really surprising. So definitely, and John Manuel, thanks, Dr. Sean, for the acknowledgement. I would Kiss. I thought Kiss would be in there too. Oh yeah, Kiss.
We are getting to it.
We are definitely going to get to that, Mary, because we got
another genres here.
All right, so Sean, thank you so much. So we're gonna take it over to Tommy. I think Sean covered everything. I usually have my little 2 cents, but I think he covered everything. So
all right,
I'll have 2 cents for Tommy.
So we got a lot of stuff to talk about as far as rock and roll is concerned for the 70s, especially hard rock and roll. One of them which, AC/DC, Highway to Hell, legendary riff. What else do I have to say about that?
Right.
But that was like the biggest song that AC/DC has ever released in its history. And besides Back in Black, I'll give it that. But that was 80s. We'll get to that maybe eventually. But Highway to Hell, if you don't know that song, I don't know where you've been, but that's one. But they had other ones. There was Dirty D's Under, Cheap, TNT, Whole Lot of Rosie. All those songs are from the 70s with Bon Scott on lead vocals.
Yeah, people don't forget how great he was.
Yeah, especially me. I was looking at a few clips of him live not too long ago, and I'm like, man, what a performer. Yeah. It's a shame he passed. It's really, and again, still pretty young, compared to, everybody else. But anywho, that's AC/DC. But now we got to talk about another band from the 70s that's probably more important than that. Led Zeppelin.
Who? Yeah,
the Mighty Zeppelin. Bonzo! The greatest band, period, of the 70s. because they had
You
most
Joey just-
overplayed-
you
I can't
just
even
talk
talk right
Joey.
now.
Wait a second.
I think I got Joey. Once I
Throws
said
me in
up,
place
like,
here.
The greatest band of the 70s.
from
Just mention
songs
a
from
drummer related from that era. I'll be like,
from songs like, oh man, there's so many to name. Whole Lot of Love, Black Dog, everything. But the one that tops them all, Tangerine. The one that tops them all, though,
When the levee breaks.
still does. And they got sued for this song. Don't know why. Stairway to Heaven. The most overplayed song in a guitar store. Let me tell you that right now. And Joey would probably know.
why did you mention that,
Joey-
bro?
And
That's
Joey would
illegal.
probably know that. 'cause you're
That's the
just-
illegal Guitar Center riff.
Yo, man,
That was
Many
the
Guitar Center
song.
where you hear Zeppelin riffs.
That's one of them.
That's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Good song to rule them all.
So one of the things that I'll say about Led Zeppelin is that not only, obviously, they were a force that came in, with the idea that they were going to do what Cream did, but take like B.B.
step
King and Muddy Waters and all these guys and kind of add this scream to it. It was really a different thing in its own. None of it was complicated, except maybe some of the guitar parts from Jimmy Page were pretty advanced. Because Jimmy was a session musician. Jimmy played on a bunch of songs. Jimmy was in the Yardbirds. He was a musician.
He was there before Zeppelin was Zeppelin.
So he was a very, very well versed guitar player and musician by the time he got to Led Zeppelin. So when they all got in a room together, I can't remember who told the story, but one of the guys told the story that they were doing their first rehearsal and they're all like in the room and they all kind of break into something and they finished it and they all kind of just looked at it. They all kind of looked around the room and kind of just smiled like, oh, I think we got something here. It was funny.
We got it.
Yeah, I think we got something.
By George.
And,
That's how Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers actually came to be, from a jam in South City.
yeah, you see. So I mean, I think that's part of the mystique of that band was that the musicians came from doing so much other things. John Paul Jones was also another guy who's been around, and John Bonham and stuff, and of course Robert Plant's voice really just tied everything together. I mean, one of the greatest rock voices of all time. I mean, you can't even deny it. And not just that, because people talk about the scream and stuff like that, and you talk about his ability to go, that part. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about his phrasing. I'm talking about really he's just a great freaking singer. He's just a really classic rock singer. So Led Zeppelin, definitely a huge impact in the 70s because they took that happened in the 60s, which was, they took everything that happened in the 60s. They took the blues, they took rock, they took the harder kind of rock things like the Kinks and stuff that did things that were a little bit just rougher, and they came in and they did what they did. So just great albums. And Physical Graffiti, I think, is just like ridiculous. It's just, and if you listen to the music, and there are a lot of like tempo messes, and it's such a raw album. All their music is so raw. It's just right in your face, and John Bonham just decides he wants to speed up, and as a drummer, Joey knows, you don't just go around and I'm just gonna speed up at the second bar, after the first chorus. Yeah, you don't do that as a drummer.
That was me back in high school. I had the Stuart Copeland syndrome.
Did you?
I start songs off at like twice the tempo, the original tempo, and then she'll be like, Joey, slow down.
It happens because of energy. You're so into it that you're just like very, And John Bonham had probably the opposite, because he's probably a little bit out of it at some point. He was just playing really, really slow, and then he'll pick it up. But the records themselves recorded so weirdly in like castles, and drums for When the Levee Breaks was like in a hallway where they just mic'd the hallway. There was this great huge hallway that had this big echo, and they said, why don't we put the drums in the middle of the hallway and record them? And everybody's like, you crazy? He's like, yeah. So then they did it, and when the levee breaks came out, and
they give him that powerful
give him that
sound.
huge thing. Even though John Bonham had a huge fucking excuse my language, a huge freaking bass drum. I mean, didn't he have like what's an average one? Is an average one like 22 or something?
Yeah, it's like 22. I think he had like a
28.
Yeah, 28. I think.
Yeah,
it was huge. Like
yeah,
it was almost like Buddy Rich's old.
That's what she said.
Yeah, and he and he
I
had
bet you
two.
hit that, Sean.
Yeah. So, but if you remember correctly, he wanted to play with double bass, but the guys didn't want him to do double bass because he had such a fast foot. So they would take his double bass from him before the show, and he would be like, "Where's my other pedal?" So he'd only have to play one bass because they didn't want him to play with the double bass.
He was OP. He was overpowered.
Can you imagine double bass, John Bonham?
Ah, forget about it.
He wouldn't.
He'd be playing for Dream Theater.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. Tommy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Anyway, so
that should be the name of the show. I'm sorry.
Quick mention. If you see behind me, I got a Gibson SG. Not only for AC/DC, but there's another band from the 70s that really made an impact.
Tell us, Tommy.
Black Sabbath. Yeah. Iron Man. Legendary song released in 1971. What a way to come into the heavy metal world, right?
Hey, don't forget about War Pigs, bro.
And that one, everything.
I am going to cut in for a second because
Go ahead, John.
I did see them live at the PNC not that long ago.
Oh, was that for their last tour?
That was Black Sabbath.
No, but was that like for their last tour?
Yeah, their last tour. Well, not their last. I think it was their last to last tour. I think their last tour they were sounding a little. Well, let me just say that this Tommy, the guitar player, is the whole band blew me away. I was so shocked at how tight these guys were, and it was like it was like watching a Rush show. Like when you watch Rush, live, it's like just a force just hitting you, and it's perfectly timed. The music, everything is just perfect hitting you. This is exactly what Black Sabbath had. And Ozzy Osbourne was Ozzy. He came on. I can't fucking hear you. He said that like 10 times when he came out. He had the mic. I can't fucking hear you.
I can't hear you.
I can't hear you. So it was like, and he did that for like the whole show. But he sounded great. I mean, he was off a little bit. You could tell his voice was really, he was struggling on some of the older songs and stuff. But he's Ozzy. You know what I mean? He's Ozzy. What are you gonna say? He walks around and he's Ozzy. He's still freaking awesome. He is the epitome of like survival of the craziest life ever. You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I saw those guys live and I was just blown away by them.
Sorry, Tommy.
Tommy. Yeah. Going away from we're going to a little bit of a harmony zone here with a band called Boston in the sense of guitar harmony.
Oof.
The guitar harmonies that he put on those songs.
Great.
Oh man. They really stand the test of time. But one song particularly, not exactly, well, I guess it did have harmonies at some point in the solo, but one song that really stands out to mind, another overplayed song, probably in a guitar store.
I know it is.
Particularly Guitar Center, probably, is More Than a Feeling.
Man.
Piero's music.
Yeah.
That's actually legal, Piero's music, so.
It is.
You go Piero's music. It's more legal than Stairway to Heaven.
Shut up.
Everything's more legal than Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, it's like, please give me a break. Enough.
Or that or Sweet Child of Mine.
Oh God.
I just gave up trying to learn that song.
Not even played well.
Anyway, Tommy.
So, More Than a Feeling.
Sorry, Tommy.
The production that went into that song, you had layers upon layers upon layers of different stuff, from vocals to guitars to bass to drums. You had it all.
Well,
Greatest song they ever wrote.
Yeah. Speaking of the Warriors, you know how that was achieved, right, Tommy? You know that was achieved in a basement.
Yep,
That was achieved in a basement studio.
Also, not to mention, it was like Sean said, it was all done in a freaking basement.
A great documentary on them too.
Mm-hmm.
How? I want to know how. Like, geez.
You know what it is? It's because when you're spiritually strong musically, I'm going to get a little philosophical, but when you're spiritually strong musically and that's all that matters, it doesn't matter what. Look what the Beatles did with what they had. You know what I mean? They didn't have nowhere near what we have now. You know what I mean?
In a time crunch.
And and they have people that are today trying to still emulate what they did in the 60s. So it's all about just having that, it doesn't matter the technology. I always tell people, like, especially guitar players, because, Tommy, guitar players are like mentally insane when it comes to like trying to find the tone and this doesn't sound right or connected. Yeah. It's like,
I'm guilty.
So, yeah. So you're always constantly doing it. But one of the things that I always say is like Jimi Hendrix had like a guitar, he had the amp turned up high and one fuzz pedal and a wah when that was available. And that was it. You know what I mean? And that was it. So it's all about what you actually as a spiritual person puts into it. If you believe in the spiritual, some people are looking at me like, we're just dust in the wind, man.
We are
dust in the wind. By the way, I was going to say about Boston, if they were more prolific in writing as far as quantity, they could have given the Eagles a hell of a run for their money. But they didn't put out as much as much. And I think there weren't as many songwriters. I think there were 2 songwriters, right? But I guess Don and Glenn were so, I don't know, from something else. But
that spiritual aspect, as well as that's probably just how they organize it. They were such a great hit making team that it was Don and Glenn, and they had to come up with something.
John and Paul.
Paul.
Yeah. All right, Tommy. Sorry about that.
It's all good. Now, we can't forget about punk, right? Can't forget about it. So, one of the prime bands of punk in the 70s, one of them, is a little known band called the Ramones. Anybody ever heard of them? I don't know.
Yeah.
Rockaway Beach.
Don't know much about the Ramones, to be honest.
All I know is they're punk now. They're no, but they had the song that Sean was just singing above. Oi, oh, let's go, Blitzkrieg Bop. And that song, my friends, if you don't know that song, regardless if you love punk or Ramones or not,
you're not human.
Yeah, like Mary said it. Yeah, Mary, you're not human.
Right. He's gonna make a joke. Never mind.
But there was also other punk
Sunday show.
There's also another punkish band from this time. Actually, I can kind of consider 2. The Knack, My Sharona.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard that song.
Oh, another joke just came to my head, but I'm not going to say it here.
Yeah, just don't. Yeah. If you don't know that song, like Mary said again,
we'll get canceled, Joey.
Yeah, we're going to get canceled.
Yeah. So
say goodbye.
And then there was another band with a female lead vocalist, Blondie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love Blondie.
One way or another.
And a certain drummer was, and to add to that, Tommy, I think a certain drummer was from over here, Mr. Clem Burke.
And actually, quick thing to note is my dad actually knew him when they were kids.
Oh, nice.
So
he grew up in Bayonne, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think he actually lived close to me, if I'm not mistaken. Well, like his old house.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah. There you go. Who knew? Now, we got to get to other aspects of the 70s, too, besides hard rock, punk rock, heavy metal. There's also another little thing called prog rock.
Make it quick, Tommy. Joey's waiting.
All right. So, prog rock, we got Jethro Tull. Yes. Who else we got?
Yes.
I think there was other bands, but I didn't list them here. Rush. Yeah, exactly.
What year did Rush start? Rush started in like 77, I think.
No, Rush was early 70s.
It's like early 70s, right? Yeah.
But
before
I think
Police
yeah,
were-
later, I think. But
without Neil Peart, their first album,
Yeah.
Fly By Night.
Oh, wow.
And-
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
and one more quick honorable mention before I turn it over to Joey. Another big band from the 70s, Queen,
Ooh.
Bohemian Rhapsody. What else do I have to say?
There we go.
Drop the mic.
Tommy Delaney, everybody.
Another
Thank you.
illegal song on Guitar Center.
Thank you,
Not
Tommy.
really. but
Thank you,
anyway.
Tommy.
I would
Go ahead,
just
Joey. Take it.
talk a little bit about Rush. Rush's journey was incredible. If you watch any of the documentaries and stuff,
Rush's journey.
Rush, get it. We didn't talk about Journey, did we? But yeah, Rush is really one of those bands that to me had one of the greatest stories, you know, as far as like guys that really were so down to earth and so like just about the music, you know, like these guys were not even like Queen, not Queen, Kiss. What's the guy from Kiss? What's the big guy? What's
Gene,
the
talk about Gene Simmons.
Gene Simmons? He was talking about Rush, and he was like, they used to tour with them with Kiss. They would open for Kiss, and they toured a lot with them and stuff. And he used to be like concerned about like these guys just go in their rooms at night after the hotel. Kiss is running around chasing girls and creating all sorts of havoc in the hotels. And Rush is basically they're just in their rooms, just like practicing writing and just reading. You know, Neil Peart did a lot of reading as well as writing too. He was a writer. But that was kind of like what they really were. And when you watch the documentaries, I always feel like I kind of know these guys. You know, we lost Neil this year, and just crazy because that's the band I know that's the band that I've seen the most out of my whole life. Like that's the one I've seen in every single tour since Roll the Bones. You know, I would just watch all their tours. You know, and it was you know, those guys on stage what they did on stage in my opinion will never be replicated, ever be replicated. It just will not with the way they did it at that time. You know, technology today you probably can, but when you have no idea how much Geddy is doing on that stage. People don't realize he's playing the bass, he's playing the keyboard, and then he's got all these triggers on the bottom. You know, and these things trigger like certain sections. And if you ever watch one of the live concerts, you see him trigger like at the end of like Spirit of Radio. There's a whole piano section that's at the end of Spirit of Radio, and he has to trigger for the piano. He has to hit it right on cue. So it's like the piano comes in at the end. I was like, I mean, and every time, you know, because I'm always looking at their playing, I'm not always just listening to the music. I'm also listening, but I'm also looking at them and seeing them actually working, you know, and watching him go through all the actions and stuff. And I mean, we saw him at Jones Beach and we were really close, me and George. And we were blown away by how technically perfect they were almost every single time we saw them, but it wasn't like sterile, you know, because people can say like, oh, well, they sound just like the radio or they sound like the record. No, you don't understand. It's not that radio. It is live. You see them, you hear every single thing. It is, but they were so perfect and so well rehearsed. It was like unbelievable. I wanted to give a shout out to Rush because they to me were just so important.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to. I don't know if Joey, are you gonna talk about the blues, Joey?
I was just gonna talk more about like jazz rock and
Okay.
yeah.
So I just wanted to mention
I know
Stevie,
I don't really know much about the blues in the 70s.
yeah, I just wanted to mention Stevie Ray Vaughan also kind of
Yeah.
came out during the 70s, and he was very young there. He didn't really hit until like the 80s, but just wanted to mention he was around, and there's footage, and I have like bootleg CDs that I used to go to the Village back in the 90s when there were like record stores and CD stores, and I would just be digging, and then I would ask people in all the shops, you know, do you have any bootleg Stevie Ray Vaughan? And you know, they would have them, but they would have to order them and stuff. And I used to pay. I was like insane. This is back like in the 90s. I would pay like $40 for like a 1 hour Stevie Ray Vaughan live concert, And when you play it, it's like, it's not great quality, but it's him, and you could hear it enough. And for me, it was like gold. Whenever I could find one, and I have a bunch of them, and that to me was also a wonderful thing of the 70s, where recording bands became more popular. In the 60s, we really couldn't. The Beatles couldn't even get recorded because there were people would just scream and you wouldn't hear anything. But even recordings of live things was not that great. That's why when you have an album like at the Regal with the BB King in the 60s, 65, I believe, or 64 was recorded, was such an incredible recording. Again, it was a small club, but in the 70s, they seem to have perfected it, and we have like some great recordings from the 70s.
Hey, Frampton Comes Alive.
What? How in the hell did that happen? That was like such a freak of. He played so incredible in that whole show. I mean, it was just unbelievable. He did talk about it. He did do a couple. There were most of the whole concert of Frampton Comes Alive was one concert, but there were a couple of songs that were added in later from another show that they did, so they did actually mix it. It wasn't all one piece, but a majority of it was just one show, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah. And speaking of, since you mentioned Rush, I was reminded of Genesis with Peter Gabriel and Alan. I love their album "Selling England by the Pound." That's another
Genesis is such an amazing. I saw Genesis.
There's very little showmanship in their playing because they're so concentrated on playing.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of like the Eagles in a sense. I think Don Henley said once that there was a review of them that said that they were almost arrested for loitering on stage. they were just kind of hanging and not really doing much. So, what does Mary say here? Oh, I did know this. My dad was one of the drums in Wipeout. Just thought I would say that. Remember that? Oh, Wipeout! Dun, 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 dun.
Is it the surprise version?
Yeah.
Whichever one was, I guess, in the 70s.
So Joey,
that was probably the Safaris, yeah.
Yeah.
On behalf of everybody, I'll say we're so sorry, drummer Joey.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, Joey, it's all yours. I'll shut up.
Yes.
Bring us home, and then John will, because he has to talk about Santana.
Awesome. So yeah, you guys already mentioned like the biggest bands of the 70s and all that, but one thing I wanted to add to that was jazz rock. Also, the inclusion of jazz rock, especially with Chicago, I think that they really made that prevalent, and also especially with their horn line. In like most of the other pop genres of music, the horn line wasn't really as prevalent until like Chicago brought them in, and in my opinion, I think that was probably the most popular act so far that started the horn line. Inclusion of horn line, and then Tower of Power followed after, and then Soften. But that was when it really came into play. One of my favorite drummers, Danny Serafine, he's like, I watch him all the time. He's like one of those like old cats. He has a very simple style, like a very minimalist like style of playing, but it's very it gets the job done. It's very musical. He knows the right licks to put in, but he also has those like hidden chops in there, that just like he can pull them out like wherever. I think he's a very underrated drummer. Like a lot of people like look at like Buddy Rich and like Steve Gadd and all those guys, but Danny Serafine was another great cat. Like he was kind of like Steve Gadd in a way, like the way that he played. Yeah. But he really drove the band forward. Like he was once really like play on top of the beat. But him, like Peter Cetera, who else? Terry Kath especially, like they all just like locked in. They started back in like I think at high school or something. Like Terry Kath was like he also had some like jazz influences in his playing as well, some like blues jazz influences. But like he was a monster like himself. Like especially when you watch the Tanglewood performance, I think in like '79. I think it was 74, I think, or whatever. Yeah, but those were. It was crazy. That time was crazy, and I think the early stuff that was when, like Chicago albums like 1 through I think it was their first 7 albums. I think that was when Yeah, they released like most of their early albums in the 70s. During the 80s, that was when like Peter Cetera became the frontman.
Right.
And they became more like power ballad centered, which still sounded good, but I think like their real sound was from the 70s.
Absolutely. I've always said
yeah,
that about them.
yeah. Like I was just like listening to some of their stuff. It's so like so creative and so like just blending so many different styles together. It's crazy.
Yeah, like 624. I mean,
Yeah.
songs like that and
What a legendary solo in there.
Yeah. That was actually the first song I played on drum set.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the first song ever. Like my teacher, Mr. Good, like when I was in grammar school, like he taught me that song. Yes.
Yeah, I stole a lot of those slides because that solo has a lot of these. He does a lot of these slides in that solo.
Oh yeah.
As a kid, I
wah
was
pedal.
stealing that. Yeah, I was just like, he's just incredible solo. What a freaking great band.
Crazy, yeah. And I have to go soon, but like one other band I want to mention is Grand Funk Railroad. That's
Oh, that's right.
yeah. They were like
Pour it up.
yes. I mean, I'm assuming you all like all you fans of us like you already know our deal with Grand Funk Railroad, but
Band.
yeah,
They
they were like I think they were like more of the pop version of Zeppelin, but they still had like a heavy sound to them. But like they were more geared towards like the popular audience.
Yeah.
And I think for a time in the 70s, like they actually outsold Led Zeppelin in tickets.
Yep.
And their catalog was like so good too. Like it was, just classic, simple rock and roll. Like it had a Heartbreaker. I think it was like that 3/4 that 3/4 waltz feel. And then you got like One American Band. You got Some Kind of Wonderful. Like all those things. And they got like blues influence. And they're one of those bands. It's like the dynamic was a little. They were like the Police. Like the dynamic was a little like they did a really. I think something happened with the Mark Farner and the drummer Don Brewer. I think some like business thing happened between them or something. Like someone ripped them off. I think Don Brewer was the one that ripped him off. But yeah, it was some like money scandal going on, and then I think they kicked Mark out. They kicked Mark out of the band or something. Like they took some money, which was kind of shady. Like I didn't like that, but just looking at their music, like their music, like the way they played, like Don Brewer, he had a very powerful style of playing. Like he was kind of like Bonham, like the way. They played. But they were very tight, very in the pocket. What's another one? The Locomotion, their cover of the 50s song Locomotion. I forget what the original version was by. But it was they were freaking good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey,
I actually gotta go right now, but
Yeah.
it was good to be on.
Yeah,
Really
good. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we'll see you maybe next week again. All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Definitely.
You
See you guys soon.
Take care, man.
All right.
Cool. So I'm gonna actually cover the Queen. Disco. We didn't talk disco yet. So something happened in, and I think it was propelled by Saturday Night Fever, where the music was still out. It was out because the Bee Gees had that music already out, and they were just like, "Hey, can we just use it for this movie?" And as a matter of fact, I have a friend who was very close to him, John Travolta, through our religion, and he was in the 70s. He was in Los Angeles, so he was talking to his friend, and he tells his friend, he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to New York to do this thing," and his friend's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" He says, "It's this like dance movie thing. I don't know. It's like gonna have this dancing, so I got to learn how to do this kind of dance." And so he's telling his friend that. And he's telling me this. He's like saying, so he went off into Saturday Night Fever, and I was like, "What? That was the dance?" I was like, "That's what you were telling me about." So just like he had no idea, you know what I mean? And really, when you go and you watch Saturday Night Fever, not a great film. You know what I mean? Not a great film. I mean, it was a great film because of the music and the dancing, and it was very depressing. A very depressing, very sad film. You know what I mean? There's a suicide in the film. There's like it's just a sad film. but the music just shook the world, and it shook the world in a weird way because it angered some people, and yet some people loved it. And then disco became the thing to do. And then there was the famous disco is dead, disco sucks, and exploding of the records and at the stadium and all that stuff that they did, which was unfortunate. But the Bee Gees went on to continue a successful careers, and so many other acts, Casey and the Sunshine Band, and Chic, and
is now an associate producer, actually I think executive producer at Abbey Road.
Oh,
so
wow.
that shows where his career went.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. And you got Donna Summer, who became like the queen of disco at that point. Which, by the way, she had an incredible voice. It was just an amazing voice. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about disco for a second. Earth, Wind, and Fire, which Mary just said. Thank you, Mary. Yeah, I mean, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Jesus, I mean, those guys are fantastic. The power that disco had, and the power that the rock bands had, they were so different. That the fact that they could exist in the same universe. It was definitely possible. But there was some anger behind it. I've always wanted to kind of investigate it, and I haven't seen any documentaries that really covers what was the reason why the anger was so, like, who organized all these things and who was so angry with disco. And it made no sense to me. You know what I mean? It was just, the disco music was dance music. We have dance music today, right? Some people call it house music. Some people call it, whatever. What's the other term that they use? Anyway, like electric music, trap. It's just music that you want to dance to. But I don't think that there's any better music that was disco other than disco for dancing, for just straight up dancing. You know what I mean? If you don't want to think and you don't want to start listening to, oh, look at those harmony parts, or oh, what is that? What's the time signature of that song? It's like that's what we do here. You know what I mean? We do that. But when you just want to hear just music, and you want to just dance, I think that's the best. I Will Survive. Gloria.
Even Rod Stewart got into disco, who we didn't even cover yet. Rod Stewart.
That's right, Rod Stewart. And a lot of people actually did cover. They kind of did do that. Blondie covered a little bit of that. She was
Queen went into disco. Well, at least Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, Queen did a little bit of that. And it was really, what was disco? Disco was, it was the fact that the hi-hat, there was 16th notes on the hi-hat. That was like the gist of it. If it's not, it's like, it's just a song. But if you go, suddenly it's disco. You know what I mean? And you have those rhythms behind it and all of those organs. I think synthesizers were becoming a little bit more used during the time.
Organs and synthesizers. Stevie Wonder. Got to mention Stevie Wonder as well. Stevie Wonder.
Man, there's too many.
With the he put a wah on his keyboard.
Yep.
And that's how he got.
Yeah. It is superstition. Right, that one. That was amazing. Track.
Many others.
Yeah, a lot of them actually. Yeah, he got a little carried away. Like Stevie. But I forgot. I didn't mention Simon and Garfunkel.
Yes, at the beginning of the decade, they had the best-selling album, which was "Bridge Over Troubled Water."
That's right. There was somebody else I was thinking about earlier. Aerosmith had a huge impact on that. Yeah. And yeah. So anyway,
Eric Clapton and Derek and the Dominoes early on in the 70s.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about Eric. Well, Eric has been in every decade, so
it's
he was big and huge in every decade.
He's a special case there.
Yeah,
just like Paul McCartney.
Yeah,
true.
Different entity. So, all right, guys, I think we covered the 70s. There is so much to the 70s, and I feel that when you do one show, you're not even really able to cover it. We did 3 shows on the 60s because that was like a decade that we felt was really important and that we love. And where I think a lot of what we were talking about today came from. Not I think, I know it did. We won't do a 70s part 2 because we are actually revamping this series to something. Just a little announcement to anybody that's still listening. We're probably going to do, in my opinion, and I'll talk to the guys about that, I think we're going to do the 80s next week. And I believe that's it. I don't.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. I think we're gonna do the 80s.
Hey, 80s is fine with me.
Yeah, we're gonna stop with the 80s. I think that will be the last show of this that you see here, and we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do next. Beth Hansen, how are you?
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Beth,
it.
Mary,
Thank you,
everybody. I
Frank,
appreciate it.
whoever else is
Rock
here.
on.
Make
Thank
a comment.
you.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it. So, oh yeah, I will survive. Beth says, "Oh no, not I will survive."
I will survive.
Yeah,
was
I wasn't sure if I was gonna talk
My
about that.
Dad's reception.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was gonna talk about that show because I was thinking to myself, because first I was afraid, I was petrified, just thinking. Anyway, I do that sometimes to fool people when I'm telling them stories. I was like, first I was afraid, and honestly, I was petrified. And I just go into the whole thing. But anyway,
Anywho,
why not just mention stupid stuff? So
Hey,
next
if
week,
anybody's still here, email johnhenrysoto@gmail.com. Follow BreakTime at BreakTimeLiveNJ. You can buy my autobiography, pre-order it from 2064. It coincides with the BreakTime reunion tour. You can get it anywhere people sell stuff.
God, I don't even know if I want to think about a reunion tour yet when we haven't even really started.
no, this is where you put it there. You put the energy there. Put the energy there, but then you have to focus on today.
We're gonna be around for a long time, folks. So be prepared.
We'll be here like, welcome to music. My name is.
Great time's a great time. Yeah.
Great time.
We're gonna have a great time.
Yeah.
I actually have something that would be a cool little activity to close this out.
Go for it.
Song picks and album picks from the 70s. Any song picks and album picks from the 70s. I have a few to get you started in the zeitgeist of it. So, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road.
Oh yeah.
And the album Goodbye Yellow Brick Road as well. That's for my mom. Plus, I love that album myself.
Great album.
Moving Out for my Uncle Roger. And The Stranger. Joy to the World for my dad.
Mm-hmm.
An American Trilogy for me and my dad from Elvis and his live days. And the albums that I haven't mentioned are Tapestry and Rumors. So those are my album picks: Stranger, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Tapestry, Rumors, and Ram from Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney. Very nice. For me, it's probably the Led Zeppelin 4. That one was like a Physical Graffiti, I think Physical Graffiti, did that come out in 80 or was that 79? I think that was it might have been late, because I think it was in the works and there was some problems with it.
It was released as a double album on February 1975.
Oh, 75.
It was recorded in 1970.
Oh, Physical Graffiti. Wow. So for some reason, I don't know why I thought that was later. But that album to me was fantastic. I did like the Elvis live in I don't remember. Aloha, the Hawaii one. I love that. It was so good.
Yeah. He only had like maybe 4 hours sleep doing that thing. He was exhausted when he was actually going live with that.
One of my favorite Elvis documentaries is the one I think it's called This Is Something, This Is Me, or something like that. This is Elvis.
Elvis Presley. I actually did watch that this weekend.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow, what a great documentary. We used to, when I was younger, your age of you guys, me and the bandmates and friends and whatever we'll have an Elvis party. So on August 16th, or closest, whatever Sunday or Saturday was closest to that date, we would come to my house and we would play Elvis for the whole night, and we would have fried peanut butter banana sandwiches with milk, and then get sick. But we did that like years and stuff, and it was just a lot of fun. And it's something that he impacted us, which is weird because our music is nothing. We never really talked about him while we were playing, or it wasn't like but it was something that was there, that it was just an incredible. I mean, Elvis when he got on stage was like a religious experience in a sense. You know what I mean?
If it wasn't for Elvis's show presence and just the way that he presented music and the way he was on stage, none of this would have happened. Even the bands in Great Britain that came over during the British invasion, they would have had nobody to look to.
Yeah, because I think he had certain audacity and confidence, but it was so sincere and came from a really good place. And he was such a good guy, he just really liked people. He liked the audience sincerely. He was also very nervous. I mean, this is Elvis Presley, and he's like
nervous Southern boy.
Yeah, pacing backstage, and I'm like, dude, you're Elvis freaking Presley, man. But he's like pacing backstage, and he's like all freaking out. And of course, when that I sometimes go on literally on YouTube and I just play the opening because it jazzes me up. I just feel like, man, just walking out on that stage and the place is like, I mean, it's just so exciting, and just not. I don't think that'll ever happen again. Not to that degree. There's certain people that just will not happen again. Sinatra, Elvis, Michael Jackson. It's just that's just not. It's just we did it. We saw it. We lived. We can experience now.
James Brown.
James Brown was great. Michael Jackson took a lot of James Brown stuff, and also what's his name? Jackie Robinson? No, not Jackie Robinson. Jackie Wilson.
Jackie Gleason.
Jackie Gleason. The Honeymooners with your host Art Carney.
Bang.
I like his movies also. That's right. So he had some great movies. He was
Real.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite was Blue Hawaii. I like Blue Hawaii. That was actually, for me, I was actually one that I liked. There were a couple of them that I just thought was like
Baby, won't you be my teddy bear?
Yeah, I actually thought that Jailhouse Rock and Love Me Tender were really great films. Like his acting performances. I mean, he was really a good actor. And then later on, it just became they cheesed him up. You know what I mean? And he just became a guy in a Hawaiian shirt that just worked in a bar and happened to sing. Yeah, he's a mechanic, but he can sing. Have you heard that guy sing? Well, I do a little singing. I don't know. I just I do what I do. I do what I do. I do what I do. So, all right, folks. I think that's it for this.
Actually, Tommy, do you have any album picks?
Well.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
It's all right. It's all good. John.
Sorry,
now,
Tommy.
Sorry, real quick. Some albums that I've really come to love. Led Zeppelin, Song Remains the Same. What else is there said? Best. I don't want to say best. One of the best Led Zeppelin albums I've ever heard, and movies I've ever seen, actually.
Yes.
From them. Highway to Hell by AC/DC. Boston's debut album, Get the Knack by The Knack. And A Night at the Opera by Queen. Thank you. Good night.
Well, you paid your dues. That was a little Queen reference. I think James Brown's Sex Machine was in the 70s. Yeah, that's true, right? It was. I believe it was. Hey! All right, guys. Now, when we have silent in the air, it's time for us to wrap up. it goes to show you that we've exhausted this format, and we're going to ramp up something more exciting. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to talk this week. We're going to talk this week about what we're going to do for the next series. It's probably not going to be called Music Makers, and we're going to come up with something different. And we're going to experiment for next week's show, which we're doing about the 80s, but we're going to like do something a little different now. So, and that is that. So, Sean, you want to take us out?
Yeah. Okay.
You left the screen. I'm figuring that's what you wanted to do, or you had to use the bathroom. I don't know.
Or both.
Or
A
both.
lot of times it's both.
Thank you, Beth. Have a good night. I appreciate it. Nice. Little Billy Joel to end off. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate you. I'll see you all next week, next Tuesday night at 9:30 for the final installment of Music Makers with BreakTime. Take care, everybody. And as always, peace.
Peace.